Welcome to the Gina and La Wonda Show, two friends that talk about life issues and their involvement in ministry. Thank you for joining us. And now here's Gina and La Wonda.
I'm Gina Williams.
And I'm La Wonda Bornstein, and we are so excited to have a guest with us, which you guys have seen before. For those of you who saw one of our mentoring videos, Jonathan Harris, who's going to be talking to us about one of the challenges that's being faced in our inner city, and that is the use of marijuana and what's going on with that and what we believe could possibly be happening. So we're so excited to have Jonathan. He is Director of Life Skills, a project of the House DC.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for being here.
Okay.
So I'd like to get started with just letting everybody know this is not a topic I'm very familiar with at all. And it's just not, I don't really know much about it at all. I did a little bit of research into the laws surrounding marijuana in DC. And so I have a very basic understanding, but maybe Jonathan, you could just start with some of the laws, and then we can go into a little bit more specifics about how it how it's affecting the kids in the community.
They actually legalized marijuana, and in regards to the law of how they worded it, even to vote on it, was misleading. Mm-hmm. And so initially, I don't know exactly how DC worded the law. I do know Maryland. Maryland is now legal for marijuana, but how they worded it was, if you would like to see ex-offenders who were wrongly incarcerated for low-level drugs like marijuana, if you'd like to see them released, then vote whatever number it was. But that also opened the door to legalizing marijuana. Okay. And so I'm not a fan of legalizing marijuana. I am a fan of having ex-offenders who were incarcerated for selling dime bags or, these low-level crimes that has happened for years, especially in the Black community. I'm a fan of having these young guys come out and try to do something with their life. But I did not like the legalization part. And the only reason why I didn't, let me just give you a little background. I had been a weed smoker for years. I mean, years. I started when I was, 16. Started selling it when I was 14. I started using I don't think that there is anything wrong with medicinal marijuana. I do believe that there are things, that there are, there's medicine, there's, within marijuana that can actually help some people in regards to pain, in regards to, I'm not going to say, just in some kind of medical some kind of medical condition. And I'm not, very versed in regards to what it can do medically. I always used it for recreational. I always used it, as a way to escape. And so the thing that bothers me is it's legal, but yet I have young people that I'm trying to employ, and they have to take a urine test. So it's legal, but if they use it, then they can't get the job. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's right. Mm-hmm. Alcohol is legal. If we drink some alcohol, I'm a Cabernet. If I drink a glass of Cabernet tomorrow, I can still take pass a urine because there is no test. And I think that's the setup. And so that's just one of my issues. And I have a couple of issues with marijuana, right now, today, in today's society.
I mean, to me, that just totally negates the legality of it. So, but then we've got folks that aren't going to understand that, and to me, that is, there needs to be more clarity around that, and there needs to be an understanding. So, for example, in my opinion, I think drinking is, more detrimental. Like if you were to go to work drinking, I don't know this, I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but it would seem to me that it would be far more destructive to go into work drunk than it would be to go into work high. Yet that doesn't seem to be a bad thing. And that's what, and I feel like it's because drinking has always been a part of our society. And then years ago, it was decided that pot was this horrible thing that we couldn't legalize. And so there's the perception that folks that smoke pot or are going to be are lesser, are criminals, and that perception, it doesn't seem like it's going away, even though we're making things legal. I'll give you an example. Like my mom has Parkinson's, and she shakes uncontrollably, continually, or she did. One of the options for her was to smoke pot. And so we got some. This is the only time I've ever smoked, because she didn't want to do it by herself, but so we got some and we smoked, and her Parkinson's, her shakes stopped. No medicine, no, all of these. I mean, she literally could have a bowl of soup. Her hand was completely steady. Right. But the perception of marijuana was so negative to her, and I think this is normal in society, it was so negative to her that she instead decided to do a deep brain surgery to stop her shakes instead of smoking pot. And so she did this surgery. She doesn't take many meds now, but she used to take a ton of meds, pharmaceutical drugs to stop her, to stop her shakes. But that's society. That's what we think of in society. And so you've got folks saying, okay, this can be legal, but I still think you've got a bigger society saying, you're not as good as me because this is what you do. And what you're saying there is, yeah, that's what companies are saying. We don't want you on the job.
I was looking at a documentary, and it was about marijuana and the incredible benefits of cannabis that God gave us. And it was focused on a group of people that had issues with seizures and their children that had seizures. And all the medication that they gave didn't work, or it had these horrible side effects. It was a documentary on like Netflix. And then the moment that, and they literally had to find like states at one time where it was legal. And the moment that they were giving their kids the cannabis, their seizures went away and they were fine. So I do want to clarify, that this is a plant that God made. So if he said, I have given you all the herbs and the, and the trees and the fruits for your medicine and for your food, we're attacking something that he gave to be used that's beneficial. How we use it and what we put in it is something different. And so you making that comparison with the marijuana and the alcohol is just so true. But marijuana has not always been illegal. I think it's been illegal for about 70 or 80 years. It was actually legal and considered okay. So it was only illegal about 70 or 80 years ago. And then people now look down on the marijuana users. And I'm not even one at all. So when I communicate, it's so funny because people think that you'd be the biggest drug user. And everyone who knows me knows I don't take drugs. I don't smoke marijuana. I don't drink, every now and then, a couple times a year, I have a little bit of wine that tastes like Kool-Aid. But but people look down on the marijuana users. But what about those who are drinking alcohol to come home and relax every day? Or, I need to have a drink when I'm done from work. What is the difference? I don't get that. But I do believe that there's a difference when you think about what's in the marijuana today.
And that was what I was going to say to you. Like, I see that And Jonathan, you probably would be able to help us because of what you're seeing with the kids. Like, it's not the pure, it's not the plant that is in our communities today. Is that right, Jonathan? There's like, it's more synthetic.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The natural form of marijuana is not what's being put into the community, and so there is a difference. And I think that's one of my biggest concerns. That's something that um, I've been saying for years. Not only myself, but there are other people across the country who work with young people, work in the inner city. It's always been a speculation. Like, okay, wait a minute, there's something up with this marijuana. And so no one knew. There were rumors. There were rumors years ago, but it just seemed so far-fetched that fentanyl was in it. I heard it from a youth worker who worked with young people in the inner city in Baltimore. I heard same thing from someone from LA. You know, when you start hearing from former, well, like Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg says, I smoke. But one of the things when you start hearing from seasoned marijuana smokers, but they would say, but I don't smoke the stuff that these young people do.
Mm-hmm.
That right there should make us say, well, wait a minute. Well, what are they smoking? I thought they were smoking marijuana. You smoke marijuana, so what are they smoking? And so what is being dumped in the inner cities is marijuana that's tainted with something. And there are speculations that fentanyl is on it, small doses of fentanyl, but there's something, even the young people know something's on it. They just don't, no one knows what's on it. The drug dealers, what's on your weed? I don't know, man. I get it like that. What do you mean you get it like that? This is the way I get it. And coming from a former drug dealer, we always knew, what we were selling. We always knew what was on our drug, good or bad. We knew what was on it. Now, apparently, they're getting shipments in and they don't know what's on it. And I think that's the biggest concern. And there's a difference. I know people who grow their marijuana, but it's completely different from and they will say, oh, I don't mess with that stuff that's off the street.
And so, is the stuff on the street do they put the dealers or whatever, are they putting fentanyl or other things in it to make it addictive? Like, why would they put something else in it?
For one, it's it's highly potent. It's very, very potent. But one of the things that we realize is young people are getting addicted to marijuana at an alarming rate. And so, like I said, I started smoking marijuana when I was 16, and 20 years later, still smoking, and wasn't addicted to it the way young people. Now, there did come a time when I realized, like, okay, you know what? Maybe I need to stop. And I couldn't stop because, I'm so used to getting that high. And that's what, when I said, okay, I think I need to stop because now I need to have it. But it's nothing like young people are starting to smoke marijuana and they're getting addicted the first month, within the first month. And it's unheard of, because marijuana has a way, what I have seen, just my experience, it gradually, the reason why for years people say it's a gateway drug, because what happens is you smoke it, because there was a season when I could smoke it and I could come over your house, clean your car, go over to Wanda's house, clean her house, and I'm just so productive. But gradually diminished over time when I would smoke it and I was like, I don't feel like doing anything today. And so that was another reason why, I said, okay, I need to stop smoking because it's not making me productive. And so what happens with marijuana is for those people, some people, they start and then their body says, I want something more. And they go, and that's, heroin addicts, crack addicts. Everyone started with marijuana. No one's just like straight when I came out the box and says, I think I want to do heroin. I think I want to do crack. They had already started getting high. and they wanted something a little more. Nowadays, the marijuana that these young people are getting is so potent and it's so addictive that they're going to want something more and stronger at a faster rate. And so the side effects and what I hear, whether it's educators, where I hear community people, what everyone is wondering is, what is the real side effects that we're going to actually see 5, 10, 15, and 20 years down the road? And that's what none of us know.
Jonathan, when you were talking, you made me think about when you talk about how potent it is. And, we've heard people say that some believe that it's just completely all synthetic, that it is a replica and it's not even, doesn't have any traces of the cannabis in it at all. Others believe that it does, but it has fentanyl, or it has some type of opioids in it. So I know I was talking to someone that I know, and she's been clean for years of taking, drugs, and been really happy and et cetera. And so she said to me that just a few years ago, she was hanging out. We were all, dealing with COVID. She was hanging out a few years ago, and somebody offered her, a marijuana. And so she's like, oh, wow, I haven't had anything for years. No big deal. Everybody's hanging out. I'll take a hit. So she smoked, a joint or whatever. And so she applied for a program to get into. This was about 3 months later. She applied for a program to get into. And so they said, okay, well, we're going to have to drug test you. She's like, oh, fine, you can drug test me. I don't have any of those hard drugs. I had my system for years. And when she got the test results back, she said, they said to her, I'm sorry, but you have fentanyl. So you're using fentanyl. And she was sitting there just shocked. She thought, I don't take fentanyl. I've never used fentanyl. I had some marijuana, but that's all I've had in years. And that was just a few months ago. And that was just interesting just to hear her say that. And then from there, she's like, ooh, I need to step back. I'm not going to do this ever again. But she said it made sense. She said, because when she smoked that marijuana that someone had given her on the street, she said that she felt like there was a whole lot going on around her, all this action, but she was the spectator, and like she saw stuff, but she could not engage. It almost like she was in a trance, where she just could not understand how to get out of it. And she could only just sit back and look. The use of something synthetic that's within this marijuana that's legal. And then also just kind of going back to the medicinal reasons and purposes of it. Just because God gave us something, we still want to have a clear heart, a clear mind, and being a consistent user of something that can take us away from, being able to have that heart mind, can be very dangerous. And you pointed that out when you talked about how you got to a point where you could do something and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I don't feel like doing nothing. That means you were a regular user, and you depended on this. But I did want to mention that situation. And I appreciate you talk about how there's something different about this, that we see, because we see it in our community where our young people are just like, it just seems like people are constantly high. And we've heard that from even teachers that have said that students are just coming in, they're just like constantly high.
Can I take us in? Can I ask you a question that goes maybe to something else you've seen, but pot is not legal if you're under 21, right? But then I see kids on the street, because there's a high school near me, and I see kids on the street just like smoking it like it's a cigarette, or like they, or like they've got a cup, Coca-Cola or something, So Jonathan, what is the sense of the kids? Do they understand that pot is illegal? Are the police just not enforcing the illegality? Like in the community, this is like, it would be like a kid going to school with a beer bottle, or going to school drunk. It is illegal. And so kids can't get this drug legally. What is happening in the community that is accepting, that is so accepting of drugs, and of kids being high? Like you said, teachers are seeing this a lot. Do the kids understand that it's still not legal for them, or is it just not enforced? What's going on there?
I don't believe it's registered. It's so flooded in regards to the marijuana is everywhere. And unlike a beer or an alcohol, I have to go into a young person has to go in a store, and hopefully that store, the store operator is going to say, "Hey, let me see your ID."
Mm-hmm.
When I went out to dinner the other night, the guy said, ordered some wine. Guy said, "Let me see your ID." I was like, "Really, man?" But that's not the case. They walk past it, they smell it. Everyone's using it. Mom's using it. Uncle's using it. That everyone is using it. So they don't see what's the big deal with it, and so they don't understand that this is something that they're not really supposed to be using until they're 21.
The fact that it's illegal for kids, and I know we don't have the answer for this. Does that mean that youth could get to a point where they're, and this is kind of like way out, where they become the target and they're mass incarcerated at this 13, 14, 15, 16, 7, up to, 21 years old? I mean, they could like be the new target to create mass incarceration, or is it that the legal system, and we don't have to answer this, I'm just thinking about this, or is it that the legal system is kind of like, you know what, we're just not going to just focus on marijuana. We're just not going to do that, period. We got other bigger things that we're going to look at. So it's just an interesting thought.
Well, it's interesting to me too, because it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense that this was legalized. I get what you're saying about you can get it on the streets, it sounds like it's just very easy to get. And it also sounds like, going back to what you're saying, La Wonda, there is no consequences. I mean, Jonathan, is that right? Like, I don't feel like there are any consequences for kids legal consequences. It doesn't seem like the police are pulling them off of so why not? Why not do this? Because I can't go get a beer, for example, is that?
But and we're not saying that there should be, because I mean,
No.
let's take it and look at it from another perspective. They're smoking something that we believe is synthetic. Well, if their doctor prescribes them something because of some type of mental disorder, that's synthetic. So they're taking, it's just another form of a synthetic medication.
Yeah, but that was received legally. I'm just talking about how
I'm talking about the effect, and I understand you're talking about it's received legally. And I guess I'm looking at it from, well, health wise, what's the difference between one synthetic drug and another?
I think it's all in the messaging. I think we are we're all conditioned to feel that the doctor knows best, and so whatever the doctor says, okay, this is going to help whatever condition that I'm going through, that I'm going to that I'm dealing with. And
Right.
so there is no messaging about the marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
There is no messaging, because when you talk about marijuana, not the way they talk about it. You say it's synthetic, but that's not how they look at it. I talk about marijuana as it's laced with something. You're smoking a new form of heroin, but and they look at me like I'm crazy. No, the same effect. Heroin addicts have to have their fix first thing in the morning. When you go through the inner cities, when you see the congregation first thing in the morning, those are heroin addicts. Well, marijuana is now something that the majority of the sales are required first thing in the morning, just like heroin.
Wow.
And people don't realize that. Marijuana was always something I would get after I got off work or left school or and go hang out with some guys and sit back and smoke a J or whatever. That's not the case now. They have to have it first thing in the morning. And I remember talking to a good friend of mine that I used to get my drugs from New York, and he's a smoker. And he told me, he says, my son wakes up first thing in the morning before he brushes his teeth, before he does anything, and he goes outside and he smokes. I says, come on, man. I says, you smoked for over 20 something years. I said, you never did that. And he says, no, I didn't. I said, that's a different marijuana that he's smoking. But I think the biggest problem is we're calling it marijuana. It's not marijuana. But if everyone is calling it marijuana, we think, oh, it's just marijuana. The older generation, who maybe they stopped like myself, or they're still smoking, and there's a lot of them who's still smoking, all of them, will say, yeah, I still smoke, but I don't smoke what they smoke. And there's a reason why they don't smoke because they know that that's different than what they smoke. But because everyone is saying marijuana, 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 it's a pass to say it's okay, but it's not. We wouldn't be so nonchalant if we said, oh yeah, my child is smoking that new form of smokable heroin. we wouldn't. We would be, we would be like, wait a minute, because that's exactly what it is. This new form of marijuana is very, very, very similar to the street Percocets. Street Percocets are fentanyl. Right. There's just a higher dosage of fentanyl, and it's all related.
Wow.
Gosh, Jonathan.
You know what? Yeah, I mean, when you said we're calling it marijuana and it's not, and I think that from the beginning of our conversation, and I'm listening to you, Jonathan, I'm thinking, stop attacking marijuana. It is a plant that God made, much better than the crap that we, put out there into our kids' mouths that we have to, give them. But you're right. This is not marijuana.
Not marijuana. The real question is, how do we get the young people to start calling it by its real name? Because until they understand that this is not marijuana that you think it is, and the very unfortunate thing about it is there are so many young people who are already hooked. Mm-hmm. There are so many young people that we, that we need to come up with some kind of solution on how to bring them back. Mm-hmm. If the three of us went to go buy some marijuana right now, we would go what we know. Okay. I would go to someone on the street. La Wonda, you would probably go to someone at a dispensary, with the medicinal, some medical marijuana.
No, Gina, I would not.
Well, okay. This is an analogy. Gina, you might know someone who actually grows it up in the hills.
That's where I would go. Gina would go to the dispensary.
So,
I would go to the person who grows it.
So, but the reality is, we could all come back, and we will have different products. We will all say, yeah, I'm smoking a joint of marijuana, and the effects could all be different. And I think that's the deceptive part about what's out here on the street. We could all have the same intentions, we're just going to come back and just, whatever, but where we get it from and what's in it and who grew it, and just the origin of that seed, and what has happened to it. So that's all.
And the sad thing is, there's two things I want to say to that, Jonathan. The sad thing is the kids in the House DC community probably are going to go with what's the cheapest. And my guess is the cheaper it is, the more synthetic and the more not like pot it is. And so that is actually a very scary thing for the kids in the House DC community. The other thing that that I would say is, or that I would ask you is there any kind of grassroots discussion about this? Is this something that that people are beginning to understand? Before today, I had no idea about this, and this is something that I feel the communities need to get in front of, like you have, thank goodness, with the House DC, gotten in front of it. You're talking to the kids, you're educating them. This is not your parents' marijuana. Are there folks that are starting to see this now?
There are folks, who are, but it's a small amount because this appears to be some conspiracy theorists, and it's not. It is. This is something that is real. This is something that the masses do not realize, and so, until we really make this something well known throughout not only the community but the world, then we're going to continue to lose young people at an alarming rate.
Well, Jonathan, just thank you so much for just your passion for educating us. Yes, the House DC, I've been working on this as well, just really doing some research and talking to our young people, and we're trying, that's one of the ways that we're trying to stay in front of it, as you mentioned, Gina, and that is being able to educate them about what this really is, giving them an understanding of what synthetic means, what opioids do, and just trying to let them know so that when they're going, or if they're faced with that, or someone's offering that, or they're buying that, at least they know what they're getting, and maybe it cause them to think differently. And I just heard of one wonderful story of at least one, I should say, of a young man who was coming to our program, and he just said, you know what, I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something with my life. I want to, get involved in sports, and I'm not doing this anymore. And really just was able to see how this was not good for him. And so we just hope for many more of that. But Jonathan, I mean, you just like completely educated us today. And I just amazing, and articulated this incredibly well. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Always remember the wonderful work that the House DC is doing for kids in the community. Jonathan, I can't thank you enough for being that person that is educating kids in the community. I mean, that's just amazing. And thank you. I mean, when these kids know, they can make more informed decisions. And I just really appreciate that. And I appreciate the House DC so much for the wonderful work that they're doing with the kids, young adults in the community. If you would like to donate to the House DC, please go to www.thehousedc.org. And thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, La Wonda and Jonathan.